The challenge in India is that we are a poor country.
Mm-hmm.
We are a 77th poorest country in this world behind Bangladesh. We get paid for the decisions we make,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think leadership has three different levels to it. I started training a lot harder. I became mindful of what I ate. I started taking smarter decisions. I had courage to pivot the company, and I've not looked back since.
Very keen to know what is your origin story. Um, Obviously, you're quite popular in the Indian startup space now, but want to know what this journey has been like. How did it all start, and where did it start?
So the idea of Creditvidya actually came to me in Bombay. So I had finished my business school from London Business School. I'd come to India to make a documentary on my Nana, and Nana was a freedom fighter.
Right.
I don't know if you've been to Bombay, but there's a massive chroma on Lincoln Road. And for some reason, I wanted to buy a phone.
Right.
And I went there and I saw a bunch of these signs of 0% EMI signs,
Right.
which meant that because I was fairly new to India, what I meant was you could buy the phone on an interest-free payments.
Mm-hmm.
I went there and I said, listen, I want to apply for a 0% EMI, but my loan application got rejected. And I got rejected because I didn't have a CIBIL score.
Okay.
So I said, and I had studied in some of the most prestigious colleges in the world, and yet my loan application wasn't processed because of the lack of credit scores. So I decided I'll make my own credit score. And that's how Creditvidya started. We have now given credit scores to roughly 80 million customers so far, people who are not covered in CIBIL traditionally.
Right.
Yeah, that's how Creditvidya started.
Interesting. What is your origin story like? So, where did you grow up?
So I was born in India and came from a very humble family. We moved out to Kathmandu in Nepal when I was a year old. Kind of lived there for a bit, but then I traveled. It was in Minneapolis. Then I moved to New York. Then I moved to Los Angeles. Then I moved to London. And I know grass is always greener on the other side. I never lived in India before.
Mm-hmm.
So I had moved to India roughly around 5.5, 6 years ago because grass was greener on the other side. I realized that India is going to be a massive force. And yeah, that was then the credit that happened, and I
Right.
can talk about it later.
Got it. And so you predominantly studied abroad. So all your education was
Yeah.
in different countries, I presume.
Yes. My undergrad is in computer science and applied mathematics, so
Right.
I'm a double major. And my business school MBA is in entrepreneurship and finance.
Right.
So yeah, I've lived across various cities, and I think that's exposure came in really handy.
Right.
The ability, and I've done various jobs as well, right? If you think about it, I've been a janitor, I have been a material manager, which is like I don't know what you call in India, but people who carry heavy goods for money, like
Right.
from one place to the
Laborers.
other, laborers.
Right.
I have been a chef who would flip burgers, and I would not eat beef, but I would like flip beef
Mm-hmm.
burgers. I've been a receptionist. I have been a tutor for math. I have acted as not chef, I would say, what they call it, waiter, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a private secret events.
Right.
I've done bunch of things, man, just to kind of get away from or pay for my education. One interesting thing is I've never taken money from mom and dad since I was 16. I've
Right.
always paid for everything on my own. I've gotten a bunch of scholarships till date. So I'm
Right.
very proud of that.
Rightfully so. So, what is the first job? So, like you said, there were like, where did it start? Was it as a janitor? Was it flipping burgers? What was the first job?
I was in Minneapolis. Actually, I was in Iowa. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this first semester of US. Was in a massively cold university called Graceland University. It was massively cold, right? And I started my education or undergrad when I was 16. I barely touched 16,
Right.
and I my first year in college.
What's the story behind that? How come that's 2 years ahead of what people would otherwise, right?
I'm a little smart. I skipped a grade, and
Right.
hence. But coming back to the point, right? And it was massively cold. I'm like 16-year-old. I'm like very ambitious. I want to do things on my own, not take penny from mom and dad. And the first job I ever had was to shovel snow out of driveways for kids to kind of go through their college, or like for cars to park. So my fingers would swell to like 5 times its size, and I'd wake up and like, is that what I signed up for? But that was my first job, and I got paid roughly $3.35 an hour.
Right.
I'd wake up at 5, shovel snow, so kids can go to their first class at 7:30.
Right.
And this is Iowa winters, which means -40 wind chill.
Right. And this is in the north, right? The Canada border.
Yes, it's so both Iowa and Minneapolis get colder than Canada.
Right. Why is this? Is it high altitude or something?
High altitude and wind chills.
Right.
So yeah, that was my first ever job, and after that, I've done a bunch of other things. Yeah.
Right. Do you think living on your own, having to earn for yourself from such a young age, prepped you for being an entrepreneur?
I don't know if there's a direct correlation of me being an entrepreneur with that, but it definitely did two things. One, it made me shameless. Right?
Right.
I mean, people fear rejection. I really do not fear
Right.
rejection because I have like lived through some of the shittiest times in my life. So it kind of gave me that. And second, it gave me the ability to take risks
Mm-hmm.
because there was a time in my college days where I spent 7 days on bread and water, right? Because I just had no money for food. So what I did was I got a loaf of bread, and I would just pound bread 2 pieces a day with water. Now I've gone through that as an 18-year-old. Now I don't fear someone coming up and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to give you this business.
Right.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Right.
What's the worst can happen? I will not. I'll be hungry for 7 days. Okay,
Right.
I'll live with that."
Right. So basically, the adversity of those, like in the younger days, just helped.
It
In
it builds character.
Yeah. Right.
So what does adversity teach you? It teaches you how to handle stress.
Right.
It teaches you in your worst, if you can manage, then at your best, it doesn't get in your head.
Right.
Truly builds your character.
Right. So, I keep saying this, that when you're an entrepreneur, there's like the superhero moment. Like, it's that one moment in your head where the idea is manifested, and then there's a realization, okay, I can do it, or I now want to do this on my own. Did you have a moment like that? Like, could be something else, not credit Vidya, but could be. Was there a moment of that neat sort that you had in your mind where you said, okay, now I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or now I'm going to start something?
No, I didn't ever actually have a eureka moment of some sorts where I said, "Hey, listen, I want to be an entrepreneur." I I had a framework of thinking, and my framework of thinking was always, what do I value most in my life? And I believe, and I still believe that I value my time over materialistic resources a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And to completely own your time, you needed to do things first that you're good at.
Right.
Like, and I think passion is a overstretched word, but things that you're good at. Second, if I want to wake up at 5, I should be able to wake up at 5. If I want to sleep at 10, I should be able to sleep at 10. So owning my time was probably one of the biggest factors,
Right.
right? Which pushed me to start.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized that entrepreneurship isn't easy, but I think the framework was always has been, I value time more than money, and how do I make sure that I get most of the time to myself to do
Right.
things I really enjoy doing.
Right. And got it. So, at what point of your career did you move to India?
After my business school, I had taken. So, I mean, I have a actually funny story. I mean, I can talk about it a little bit on how I moved to India. But I moved to India. I was one of the very few who actually recruited for India.
Right.
while everyone else wanted to stay in US and UK. And I moved to India with the hope that I'm very bullish or long in India,
Mm-hmm.
and can I be part of this growth story?
Mm-hmm.
That was the intent. Starting up wasn't an intent, and startup happened.
Right.
So that was roughly around 7.5, 8.5 years ago, 8.5 years ago.
Right. Got it. So very interesting. So you saw this potential in what India could turn into in 10, 15 years time.
I still see it. So if you look at just the macro economy of India, right? Whether it's demographic, whether it's wealth creation opportunity, whether economic prosperity in the country, right, for where it was to where it is right now, how economic reforms happened in India in 1991, what happened in US in 60s happened in India in 90s.
Hmm.
We are still 10 years or a decade behind innovation that has happened in the US.
Right.
So believe, given certain, and it being democracy, being very transparent, okay, yeah, we can smirk on it, but more transparent than, let's say, China,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm still bullish on this country a lot, and I still believe this is the best time to build.
Right. Interesting. Um, have you seen cultural differences in when you now that you grew up in different parts of the world, and then you know how life here is? Do you think there's anything that plays an advantage versus maybe what back in the day could have been a disadvantage?
I actually have a contrarian opinion to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and no offense to large tech services company,
Mm-hmm.
but they ruined a culture in a way, right? They ruined a
Right.
culture by making India an offshore service company, tech companies, because then they hired a bunch of engineers and gave them hope of buying a home on an EMI,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way curbed independent thinking.
Right. So they got locked in.
They got locked in, and hence, if you look at India, right, name a product that was built in India and used anywhere else in the world.
Hardly any, right? So I think Zoho is one, probably an example.
Perhaps B2B. Okay,
Yeah.
one.
B2C, very difficult to think of. Yeah. Names.
Why? And I think we are some of the most talented people in the world, right? If you think about, from the phone that you use to car you drive to clothes you wear, everything is built outside of India. So one of the goals I've had, or things I've been thinking about, is, how do you build in India and sell global?
Mm-hmm.
Is it product innovation? Is it our DNA that does not allow to invest in R&D because we really care about near-term, short-term wins?
Right.
How much time or how many patented papers have come out of IIT?
Mm-hmm.
Literally none, right? I've sat on a bunch of these boards and I kind of realized that the funds for research in India is also given by global companies like Facebooks of the world.
Right.
We are not a country that does a long-term game, right? Which means I will invest in R&D today and reap rewards 10 years from now. We are a
Right.
country from hundreds of years that actually wanted, hey, listen, I want to win tomorrow. I want to buy a home tomorrow. I want to pay EMI. That has led to where we are. So to answer your question, I think the mindset shift has to happen, and perhaps VC industries is going to do it, where our talent can be an advantage. Right now, I don't see it.
Right. So very interesting. You said VCs could play a pivotal role. So do you think they're enabling independence and freedom in that sense, wherein you don't have to think of, say, security, or you don't have to be hassled by the usual pressure of what a regular EBITDA positive business is like, versus they're letting you think long term, build long term, and truly innovate.
The challenge in India, I mean, and I'm going to answer this a little differently, right? The challenge in India is that we are a poor country.
Mm-hmm.
We are a 77th poorest country in this world behind Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, despite putting in a lot of money, what happens is, there aren't many businesses which are cash flow positive at scale.
Mm-hmm.
An average order value of one of the largest e-commerce firm is 700 rupees,
Right.
right? So, and the way the country works is that your ability to generate income does not rise as fast because jobs are not created as fast.
Yeah.
So we are not becoming prosperer. So even if VC invests money in our startup ecosystem, it is not going to yield a positive cash flow business in
Right.
near term.
Right.
And I think there's someone on LinkedIn who said that India is not a 1.2, 1.3 billion market. India is a 70 million market. Now, if India is a 70 million market, the way VCs have to think about this business model
It's different.
is very different. And most VCs have a fund return of 5 to 6 years. So that is the challenge we face in our country today. And there's a lack of patient capital.
Right.
So it's going to be very interesting. And perhaps my hope is there are going to be businesses that are going to build for Bharat. There is going to be patient capital that's going to be invested in these businesses for 10 plus years.
Right.
And we'll see.
Do you see that changing in the near future? Do you think it'll take some more time? Because obviously now it's, I think, from where I sit and I'm looking at it, it's more of now they're trying to, I mean, obviously building for profitability, but it seems the first pivot or the first obstacle they're trying to overcome. It doesn't sound, from whatever I hear, to be a long term thinking. Um, where you're talking about patient capital, I think that thought process is not there right now. So, where does that come from? Like, would you see the traditional VCs change their strategy, or would you see some of the India bred or India born VCs sort of bring that mindset in?
I mean, honestly, I don't know how it's going to play out. What is definitely going to happen is we are going to see businesses which is highly scalable and low transaction volume.
Right.
And payment space is a great example of this, right? I think QR code is a great innovation in India.
Yeah.
India Stack is a great innovation in India, right? So it's going to be massive. UPI again, like
Right.
massive scale with low transaction volume. The problem is that the cash flow that they generate, these business generate, do they demand a valuation that they already have,
Right.
right? So that's a conflict. So I think the conflict is not in the investments. The conflict is the expected ROI on the investments you have made.
Right.
Yeah. So there will be VCs who are going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be invested in India for a slightly more longer term. There are going to be entrepreneurs who's going to build for Bharat. They're going to leverage the India stack. However, the valuation they have today, if you're building for masses,
Right.
do you still command it in 3 years from now when liquidity is not there?
Right. So, how did you go about selecting fintech as a space, and how did you select Creditvidya and what it does? Did you pivot, or was that like immediately a gold mine that you struck upon?
I wish, man, I was that lucky in my life. So when I was making Cliff Notes, right, to talk to you, one of the things that I kind of wrote about in my Cliff Notes is pivot is crucial for every single entrepreneur, right? There are very few entrepreneurs who would start their original idea and hit a jackpot in the original idea. To come to credit their story, right? What I realized that when I was at Chroma, I didn't get a loan. I realized I didn't have a CIBIL score, so I created a credit score of my own. And I went ahead and started selling these credit scores to various banks and financial institutions in the country. Hey, if a customer like Avi, who is extremely, let's assume, I think extremely is the wrong word, who's smart or who has some sort of a ability to pay back the loan despite not being in bureau, you should give this person a loan, and hence there's a technology around it.
Right.
What I realized that the economics work in such a way that I got paid 20 rupees or my company got paid 20 rupees while banks or financial institutions made a lot of money,
Right.
because they could earn money on interest income on the loan for the tenure of the loan. So business model was really well. So think about it. We process over 90 million odd consumers. That's a massive amount of customer base. We partner with 55 plus banking institutions.
Right.
What we didn't do really well was to monetize. Right, for 20 rupees, what the hell will you do? Yeah, so our pivot was, can we lend on our own credit scores?
So you become the bureau.
No, so bureaus are the ones who just give out a credit score,
Right.
but we became a quasi what RBI these days call is LSP.
Right.
lending service provider. So we said, hey, listen, this is our score. We will lend, but the balance sheet will be behind a financial institution.
Understood. But did that model exist? Was there regulation for an LSP to operate at that time?
No, no, we stretched boundaries
Mm-hmm.
in many different ways, right? So we were the first ones who came in as an alternate data credit scoring player in the country.
Right.
We were the first ones to kind of evolve the entire ecosystem.
Right.
And I'll give you a simple example, right? So most large consumer platforms, when they want to monetize their customer base, they want to offer financial products on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can go and partner directly with a bank, or they say, hey, listen, we'll partner with this third party who is going to not only give out a score to these my consumers,
Right.
but also going to get access to capital from a bunch of these financial institutions by plugging a
Right.
simple API. So we became that API layer for a bunch of these consumer platforms to enable loans on their platform,
Right. So then you needed support of these financial institutions. They had to recognize you as a partner.
which happened because of our first 5 years of selling credit scoring to them.
Right.
So if you think about it, we started off a lane building a bureau
Right.
and had massive, strong partnerships with these financial
Institutions.
institutions. We leveraged that partnership to become a quasi lending player for large consumer platforms.
Right. Got it. I'm assuming there were constant exploration or pivots of new business models throughout the course, because you started off as the a verification authority, right? If
Yeah,
that's the right term.
SaaS player.
Yeah. And then moved that to becoming a partner, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think there's a cash is king, right? And you know it as much as I do. Is when you have, I mean, we created their scale from 100 square feet office to 357 odd people across 5 cities,
Right.
and there was a tremendous pressure to figure out, hey, how do we build a large business? So there was constant, I won't say pivot, but constant experimentation to figure out what does it take for us to improve our business model,
Right.
what does it take for us to scale massively, and always my goal has been, whatever space I am in, I want to be in top two player.
Right.
Right, that's like a framework I work on, right? If I'm not one of the top two players, then I don't want to be in that space. Like even the gym, right? If I'm like not one of the top two most hardworking, I don't want to be like, I would
Right.
do something else in my life.
Right.
And hence that constant search of becoming better and better allowed us, because we had an option, like we could actually, which most companies do, is to say, hey, you built a really good technology platform, can you export it to a global market? India being a learning bit, can you export it to another market and charge slightly higher? And we
Right.
had offers from Middle East banks and some banks in like Brazil, South America, which is an emerging economy very similar to India. But for me, I was like, I came to India to build for India, and I'm going to sit in India and then go sell in Middle East and Indonesia and Vietnam and South America. For me, the best was be long in India and transform the business model in such a way that I build inside for the country.
Right. And how's that mission now, with obviously the change in your ownership and so forth? Like, does that change anything in terms of vision, or you still?
So we are still in, we run independently, right? Though
Right.
we are a CRED subsidiary, we run independently. I still am the CEO of the company, and being given a full liberty to run this towards the vision on which this was created. So nothing changes.
Right. And that's a dream, right? As an entrepreneur, like, even if you've had an exit, you want that freedom and authority to run things your way.
I've been blessed in, I don't know how many words I tell you, like to get an exit, to get the freedom after an exit, to sit here on a Thursday and talk about my journey, right? I think I'm living a dream.
Right.
So I'm,
Right. Got it. When you were setting up, and I'm assuming you set up in 2012, around that time. Um, I think this is, so good 11 years ago, and the law around incubation of companies, incorporation, everything has changed uh, drastically, right? So I'm assuming you went through a lot of hurdles in the early days when you was trying to set up, especially in the financial sector, because there's so much scrutiny and uh, say paperwork to get through. What was that like the early days?
No, so we started when startups weren't sexy, when fintech
Mm,
didn't exist as a word. To be honest, like 2014 was the time frame when we actually started, and 2016 ish, and we got our first funding.
right.
And that's the time frame. It was difficult. I think a lot of effort went behind not just regulation from perspective, but also from perspective of even establishing credibility to sell.
Mm,
Right? Who is this guy who's come with an accent and kind of is trying to sell to a bank or an NBFC in the country? Right? I think the struggles were more towards building and selling.
mm-hmm,
I'd outsourced a bunch of finance related company secretarial work
right,
to third party agencies. Though there were challenges, but we were able to deal with it slightly in a much better way.
right,
But the other part where startups weren't like looked upon in a positive way, I think those challenges were much more difficult to navigate.
right. And what are those challenges like?
Is to convince one of the biggest financial institutions in the country to buy from you when you have nothing.
Right.
Um, so I don't know if anyone has sold to a financial institution in the
Mm,
country. There are layers of bureaucracy,
right.
and I have a bunch of interesting stories here. But we are one of the few ones who had sold to from State Bank of India to Bajaj to Xiaomi to Flipkart to RBL to Tata Capital Fullerton. Name a bank or NBFC, HDFC Bank. We sold to everyone,
Mm-hmm,
and starting from what? Like starting from the only thesis we had for people who are not on CIBIL in this country, you need to figure out an alternative way of scoring.
right.
We didn't have data, we didn't
Mm-hmm,
have money, we didn't have statistical algorithm that would prove accuracy of these scores.
right.
So my first sell was I coded a little jargon is CSS HTML. Like I coded a fake demo of my product.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, I gave I downloaded I made this customer download an app like one of these banks or financial institution, and I said, hey, listen, download the app. I'll show you a magic on the screen. And it was a static CSS HTML that would load, and that guy went crazy. How do you have access to all this data? I'm like, bro, it's on the phone. Okay. And then he realized that, of course, he has all these data on the phone. It's just that no one has been able to mine it such an efficient
right.
manner
And make sense of it.
and make sense of it.
Right.
And it was just a dummy script. But to convince this person that, hey, listen, I need your customer's data. You need to pay me for that.
Mm-hmm,
And you need to give me the performance of this customer so I can build better scores.
right.
That's what selling is.
True. Very true.
Right? And it started there, and then the network effect came in. Once we had 5 or 6 clients, the other client joined the bandwagon, and just things went really, really well after that. Yes.
Right. And this was in Bombay, so that's where you started off as a base, and
Yes.
then you moved to Hyderabad.
So one other thing that we did was to get the tech talent in the country. I was struggling, and one of the ways was there were 2 gentlemen who had just moved back from US, and they were running a service company of some sort.
Mm-hmm,
So I decided to kind of buy them out,
mm-hmm,
in where they would get some sort of stock options in the company,
mm-hmm,
but they would move with their team to Creditvidya, and they were based out of Hyderabad.
right.
So in very early day, I decided to build a team by giving out some equity of Creditvidya, and that's why Hyderabad became our tech center. Most financial institutions were in Bombay, hence Bombay was our sales.
Interesting. I've heard this a lot. I think a lot of people have choices for where they start and why they start. and always is some rooted, say, insight to for the base being in one city. So, and at some point you moved to Bangalore as well. Uh, was that permanent, or were you more of shuttling back and forth?
So if you think, just go back to our journey of evolution, right? Most consumer platform now wanted to lend on there, and most of these consumer platforms were in Bangalore.
Right. So you had to get business.
Yes, you had to get business. So Bombay was financial institutions,
Mm,
Hyderabad was technology, and Bangalore was where most of the consumer platforms
right.
were. So there were not weeks. There was a year in my life I would do 4 cities a week.
Mm,
I'd wake up in Bombay, I'd go to Hyderabad, I'd come to Bangalore, then visit Delhi or Chennai, and then go back to Bombay.
right. Hectic.
Yeah, I had a 6F window seat, 6F Indigo seat with black coffee every morning on Monday. It's- I don't wish anyone lives that life, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it takes a toll, right? It sounds very sexy when people who don't do it are hearing it, but if you do it even for like 3 months at a stretch, it's very hard.
Try doing it for a week or two
Yeah.
weeks, right? And you don't have what are you going to eat, where are you going to
Mm,
work out, what are you going to sleep. I used to like go to the airport and realize, Acha, I am going to Delhi now, I'm going to Bombay now. When the security guys was asked me, hey, where are you going? I'm like, shit, where am I going? I had 9 different hotel room numbers, right? I'm not on 7th floor, 9th floor, 5th floor. It was a mess, man. It was not.
yeah,
And then on top of that, fundraising, right? So I'm like not only
constantly.
selling technology and now fundraising.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, and this is like, when I was, this is probably 2018, 2019. I had a schedule like this. We were trying to expand in Bombay and Delhi both. So we would do these 36-hour sprints, okay? Start in Bangalore and then end up back in Bangalore. And there's absolutely no window for anything else. You're just going from meeting to meeting.
Yep.
You probably eat during meetings, or you eat in the gap, going from point to point. And commuting in Bombay is hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, people keep saying Bangalore is traffic, but Bombay is really hard. In all honesty, I find that more congested than it is here. Maybe because I'm from here, I know all the shortcuts. I get through places fast. But I used to, and I didn't realize it back then. But I would do these sprints, and for me, it was a flex because I'm young. I was like,
Hmm.
2 years into running the place here. I'm in my 20s. Want to show my friends I'm living the business life, but it's hard because after that you realize that it takes you like a day or two to wind down. And especially if you're trying to work out and if you have that kind of a schedule where you're very active, it becomes even harder. Um, so I'm assuming that you've now tasted that sort of life, and then you've also, now are on the other end probably, which is a lot more relaxed. You have a lot more time to calculate and make moves. And I know you're one person who really, really prioritizes health, physical, mental, all of it. So what's that journey been like in comparison? Because not too many people that I know who are tech CEOs are as ripped as you are, who have kind of gym schedule that you have. I've seen you. Like you said, you want to be the best, and that's clearly visible. I somehow don't have that drive for fitness. I did a session with Chris here, and this is exactly what we discussed. At some point, I might get it, but at this point, I don't. So, how do you maintain that, like that sort of energy, and then also balancing health out, like?
So at this stage of our careers, we get paid for the decisions we make, right? I think leadership has 3 different levels to it. Okay? The first level is solving a complex problem.
Right.
Second level is solving complex people. And third level is solving complex situations. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we take pride in solving complex problems, which I believe is the easiest thing to do
Right.
because you can hire to solve complex problems.
Right.
Yeah. Me, I'm getting paid to solve for complex people, and all these complex people put in a room together and solve for these complex situations.
Right.
Right. So I get paid for doing incrementally hard work. So the decisions I made or design choices I lay out for my company, my team, will have a massive impact on them. Now, I have kind of evolved in my career from being a good problem solver to becoming someone who takes smarter decisions. Now, how do you do that? You don't do that when you're running out throughout the day. So the first level, or at least and COVID teaches a lot, right? And
Right.
it taught me a lot, right? And it taught me a lot was to put brakes on my running around and doing daily activities, right?
Right.
It put brakes on me and I kind of said, hey, listen, in order to be smarter about the adversity I was facing at that point of time, I needed to take smarter decisions, but I wasn't, because I was living in this perpetual fear that there will be stress in various form factor in my life and my company, right? So the first level of fitness for me was the story I tell myself, right? So though my physical, let's say, attributes are more visible, it's the mental work that I did for a year
Right.
that has helped me improve my physical aspects of life.
Right.
So mental work was from the simplest thing is, how do you frame a problem in front of you? Do you kind of say, hey, listen, I'm screwed royally because this problem existed, or do I kind of say, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for me to grow, let's kind of solve this problem,
Right.
right? And the frame was the story I told myself is like, great example, right? We took a very hard call that will not lay off anyone in COVID no matter what happens. So the story I told myself, hey, listen, despite having a lot of pressure from everyone, including investors, hey, listen, conserve cash. I was like, okay, we will all take a pay cut, but not a single person on my payroll is going to get laid off.
Right.
The story I told myself, because I have such a strong community of team, I am going to succeed.
Right.
Then saying, hey, listen, I'm running out of cash. And I'll tell you, not a single person has left company since COVID. Our leads are at least 5+ years with Creditvidya
Right.
on an average, in a world where attrition is very common. HDFC Bank, for example, sorry, let's not take the name of bank, but a bank, for example, in your recent quarterly calls, you realize that they have attrition rate of 25% plus. So the story I told myself was very, very important. My belief is, listen, if I am fit, I'm going to take smarter decisions.
Right.
And and you've seen me, I'm consistent.
Yeah. And that's the difference between anyone who succeeds and who doesn't. Because
Yeah.
motivation is up and down. Consistency is what keeps you, through thick and thin.
Also, I think success breeds confidence, confidence breeds success, right? It's like running a startup. If for the first year you believe you will get an outcome,
Right.
you're stupid. It's like fitness. In the first year you believe you're going to transform yourself,
Not happening.
not happening. But if you keep going at it and you start seeing success, it's the best drug ever.
Yeah.
You will not want to go back ever.
Ever.
But the question is, do you have the perseverance to go through that first year, first year and a half, first 2 years? And for me, it's been 3 years. And for credit, there's been 8 years.
Yeah. So did you work out like throughout your life, or is there something you actually just bought in 3 years ago and said, now I'm gonna hit the gym
I worked out like,
sporadically, like here and
yeah,
there,
yeah. It was like,
once
I
a
used to
week?
go to a bodybuilder gym,
Yeah.
right?
Tell me
Like
about it.
go
Goals.
and bench press, flex my muscle,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
back. But no, I've never like built it as a routine that would help me become a better person.
Right.
Not just workout, man. I think fasting, eating enough protein,
Right.
making sure that I am releasing my emotions through meditation or breath works,
Right.
compassionate leadership, ruthless prioritization.
Right.
There are a bunch of like things that are put in a framework, and I know I'm a big believer of systems over goals, right? That's allowed me to live a life which I've always dreamt of living.
Right. So it's almost 99% mental, right? And then just actions on the back of that.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever done a long distance run, or It sat on that watt bike for like couple of hours.
No, not a couple of hours. I've tried. Max I've done is like 50 minutes. I get bored. That's where I am mentally.
I'm crazy like that, right?
Yeah,
I've sat
I've
on the
seen you.
watt bike 3 hours. The world kind of diminishes in me, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'll just go, but where do that come from? Is just mental strength.
Mm,
Like when everything in the world is falling apart, and you're not even sure if you're going to raise funds. You have 370 odd people. It's only mental strength.
yeah.
Adversity teaches you. So now, if you go back to my background, a kid who didn't have money for 7 days and survived on like bread and water at 17, this is okay.
Yeah.
Now, though, I'm more matured.
And do you see the shift? And this is something I like to ask. Also slightly controversial, I would say, but do you see today's workforce in general? I mean, you employed 300, 350 plus. Do you find people who are 10 years apart in terms of generation come out a lot softer because just more in life? Because not everyone's privileged to go through adversity. And like, how does, like, and you tell people this, right? Because you've tasted it, and when I have to an extent, and I know if you've gone through adversity and come out, and there's a interesting term I use for it. It's called AQ, adversity quotient. It defines your, much like IQ and EQ, and that's the other pillar that's required to become
Yeah.
successful. And you can't knowingly go into adversity. But so I feel today's generation comes out a little protected, shielded, softer because they have more things in hand. Do you have you I didn't like notice that?
So I think sometimes we have to figure out how to push ourselves outside the comfort zone, right? No one is going to tell you, hey, listen, and hey, this is adversity. No, right?
Yeah.
You have to say, okay, I'm going to have balls to kind of do this, and that is adversity for me.
Yeah.
Like 6-pack abs, zero fucking, sorry,
Yeah, go for
salt
it.
and water for 5 days, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to choose that adversity, but so I think it's a DNA, right?
Yeah.
There are certain people who are wired to become, I want to be slightly better no matter what. I am going to seek experiences that are going to push me out of comfort zone. And there are people who are born with silver spoon and they're very happy with that silver spoon,
Right.
right? They're happy serving that dream of an EMI, a wife, a kid, a house with a garden, a dog, and a hatchback. I'd rather die than live that life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's people, and some younger generation people are not as motivated as we were, or
Right.
like I'm much older to you, right? As I was,
I guess.
right? As you are. But then I do see some sporadic, intense, creative people coming in, right? Like the way they learn, their learning curve is far faster than our learning curve was if they're committed to a cause.
Right.
I see far more creative talent,
Right.
right? Less hardworking talent.
Right.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And also, some of the smartest people that we have also trying to move out of India,
Right. True.
which is a curse of this country.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like generalize to answer your question or generalize and paint a brush like with everyone is like this. There are people who seek growth outside their comfort zone. They will actively seek adversity, and doesn't have to be man-made adversity. It could be a goal they are chasing. Some people who are not, they are very happy living that 9 to 5 life. But then that's okay. I think I was in Goa, and it's very interesting. Okay, I went on a date with this woman, and she said, "Listen, they wanted to promote me to a senior product manager, and I didn't want to be a senior product manager because I really enjoy walking, seeing the sunset at 6 p.m. There was envy in my life. I'm not an envious guy at
Wait,
all.
this is a date, and this is the conversation that is a high. Was a date or was it a interview? Like,
Date, like it was a
okay.
date, and she said that she's a product manager in a gaming
Right.
company,
Right.
and she was in Goa for 2+ years, and she said she never wants to be a senior product manager
Got it. Because
because she enjoys that long walk on the beach, seeing the sunset. And I'm like the last person who ever gets jealous of anyone, right? I'm very happy from inside, very content from inside. And I was like, there are people who are very content with what they have.
right.
So to answer our question, there's pleasure on the other side as well. There's a
Yeah.
pleasure on our side as well. It depends what pleasure you're seeking.
Right.
Some people are just happy being in their comfort zone, but they enjoy family time. They want to see a sunset. They want to have a brunch on a Sunday. They want to drink and party on a Friday night. More power to them. We are the kinds who say, hey, listen, agar there is no hustle, we can sleep. If we have not worked hard, we feel guilty.
Right.
There are
Exactly.
days when I don't work hard on Friday, I die of guilt,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've somehow overcome that. I think I was there in the early days where I had to like 8 hours felt like okay.
Yeah.
11 is, yeah, that feels like you did achieve something, right? 15, 16, you're in full thrill, like go back home and then sit again 4, 5 hours on the internet, figure things out.
Yeah.
And I did that for like long periods. I used to love working in the night. Then I think after a while I realized I think it also comes from that insecurity that an early stage entrepreneur probably has. Am I good enough to run my company? Am I will I make it, will I not? So you're working all the time without thinking. And I think at some point I feel that switch just turns over, for me at least. I became content with my own capabilities. Now it's a thing about there's no more like I put into a cricket analogy. You don't need to like practice your shots again and again. You're there, you know your technique. Now it's about playing the ball. So then that you can't practice for. You just go in and play.
No, I agree with you. I struggle still. I struggle still because I believe somewhere my self worth comes from the amount of hard work I put in. Even at the gym, right? There are days I do 6 days, right? And normal, everyone would do 3 to 4 days, and they say, or 5 days are max. But I'm the kind of guy who likes putting the effort, and not necessarily it's always productive. But I've realized that's my DNA, right? I love the thrill of working hard.
Right. Yeah.
Else I'll get bored.
It's very satisfying.
Very sad. To put your best foot forward is the most satisfying thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not about what you get outside of the outcome of it. It's just the fact that when I'm so drained that I sit in my work clothes and at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I pass out, those are the most satisfying days compared to me chilling and drinking a beer at a party. I don't know last time I went to a party, but like if I were to go to a party, I don't know if
night.
I'd enjoy that, to be honest.
Yeah. I think it's priority again. I think your brain's wired to function a certain way and then you're preparing for it. I have those evenings and nights too. Sometimes just dread going out because I know I have an early morning and I just want to be prepared.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And then the only time guilt comes is when you don't go to bed early, right? Then you, whatever you end up doing, you're watching some TV or OTT or something on those lines. Interesting thing on hard work because how do you maintain or how do you preach this without like crossing the boundary where it is seen as a toxic environment? Or because a lot of people today they see a CEO who's wired in certain way where they're on all the time, and to plug in the name of the podcast, very wired in whatever they're doing, and it comes across as, oh, this is toxic, this is expecting people. Like there's a famous LinkedIn post of working 18 hours a day, which got more flack than I think it should have, because it's a point of view. You can, people have different methods and formula for success, but as a figurehead of a company, how do you moderate that where you're not seen as someone who's like, oh, he's a maniac, he always wants to work, always wants to be in the gym, or so on and so forth?
So there was a graffiti on our Creditvidya wall, right? It said, Monday's boss is excited, Friday everyone else is. Okay? And I love my Monday. So it's Mondays,
absolutely.
Monyay, Mondays. Now, a lot of people ask me this question, right? And most these questions come from my one down leaders. So now I have 6 or 7 people reporting into me, and there are massive teams reporting into them. Yeah. And most of these guys, then when they ask me, I say is like, my job is not to be liked by everyone. My job is to inspire people. Okay? I'm not the most liked person in this company,
Right.
but people will look up to me because I'll put in more hard work than everyone else. And hard work is just not number of hours spent. Like, I think we misconstrue hard work by number of hours spent, right? Hard work is also about being there when the team needs you. Hard work is also about taking hard decisions.
Yeah.
Right? And how do you get to that decision is the amount of thinking you have put in. Yeah. So the negative connotation of hard work is sitting down in front of a laptop and working 18 hours. That's hard work in people in real life. But for me, I'm never like, say, Monday to Friday, when I'm at the gym, I'm still thinking about work. Right? When I'm walking home, I'm still thinking about work.
Right.
But I'm thinking about that one problem and many ways of solving that problem. That's hard work. And I don't expect my team to sit down in front of their laptops and work throughout on weekends. That's not. But my intent is to say, hey, listen, make smart decisions. Put a lot of thinking behind that decision. And do a lot of hard work in coming to that decision
Yeah.
point. So hard work is slightly misconstrued in the
Yeah.
way I think laborer hard work is not what I'm really
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
forward to
Yeah.
in my life, right? And Naval Ravikant says, right, we are a knowledge athlete, right? And hence I don't like the concept of weekends. If I'm tired, I'll take a week off.
Yeah.
But if I'm not tired and I'm not a laborer, which means I'm not carrying things around,
Right.
I can be wired in.
Yeah. 100%. I think the same way. The concept of there's that, I think somewhere long back I read like if you're living for your weekends, then you have your perspective a little wrong, because I think some people find more joy in it, and it's fine. I think each person their own.
Yeah, each person their own.
But I think there's a lot of demonizing that comes from either sides, right? Some of them who are, and this is mainly in the early stages, where you're in the early stage of
Yeah.
getting wired in, or the early stage of wiring out, maybe.
But that's also the lesson for all upcoming entrepreneurs, right? One of the biggest mistakes I did was to solve for that hard work problem by executing a lot. It's just like when you're running, but you're not knowing which
Yeah.
direction you're running in. I think that's a big difference.
Yeah.
But if you find very capable people who are willing to run, but you kind of give them guidance on which direction to run, far more useful, productive
Yeah.
time, and you're still working hard. I don't feel guilty of not sitting in front of laptop and making a presentation or making an Excel or coding something. I don't want to do that. But even people who are making a presentation or coding or doing Excel, telling them what to make is really important.
True.
So can my hard work be thinking?
Yeah.
I don't feel guilty anymore. But this is where I think I've learned a lot in CRED. Okay, I think CRED is an organization which I have seen as some of the smartest people in India, and they are extremely empowered to take their own decisions.
Right.
So it's a great example of hiring the right people and letting them do what they're really good at
Right.
instead of interfering on a daily basis. However, you continue navigating your ship.
Right. And is that does that begin with identification of talent who would thrive in that kind of a scenario, or is anyone who comes into that ecosystem then, because of the culture, then becomes that way?
It's so factor of two things. One, second-time entrepreneurs, right? They've learned
Right.
it the hard way. Like, sure, if I were to run a startup again,
I think that's a dream, right? Like for an entrepreneur to find second-time entrepreneurs is in your, or you find entrepreneurial DNA in your people you hire, is just solves half the problem, I think.
yeah, and then that culture kind of breeds
Itself.
itself, and then clearly define values, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of automating decision making is via values,
Right.
via design choices,
Right.
and the more framework level thinking you give to your team to take their own decisions, the more you can step away from daily execution and do be a more guide to the ship than steering the sheep.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. You don't have to, you're more of a coach.
And also, I
Coach
think,
player.
yeah, some of the black swan events, right? Like that your company might get into. And let's say in fintech could be regulation, could be something like, possible recession, right?
Right.
Who's then thinking about such events, such eventualities on the negative side or on the positive side? Like, what is that one deal you can do that would take company from 1x to 10x?
Right. Did you have any of those events at Creditvidya?
Yeah, man. I think us just pivoting into this lending DNA. I'll tell you from a context, right? The lending DNA is roughly 2 years old
Right.
and now generates 10x more revenues than our B2B SaaS DNA.
Right.
And it's growing 20% month on month.
Great.
So yeah, but the point is, where did that thought process came in? Like when I was running and executing, it didn't come in. When
Yeah.
somewhere COVID hit us
Yeah.
with a jolt and we had nothing to do, that's when it kind of said, listen, what the hell are you doing, bro? Let's just change some things and it'll work well.
Hmm.
The same goes now. Now that was an event which happened to everyone, but now I push myself to say, hey, listen, okay, so one of the learnings I tell my team always, history does not teach you anything. Reflecting on history teaches you.
Right.
And the glasses you wear while you're reflecting gives you a different lesson.
Right.
So for me, what COVID taught me, hey, taking a break or putting a break on
Hmm.
day-to-day execution can open new areas of growth.
Right.
So I try to kind of say, take a big picture and think about new areas of growth.
Hmm.
And the perspective I put in is, listen, the mental story that I have built for myself. If I were to do this, what are the people I need to hire?
Right.
Are people performing it? And we don't talk about this, but I'm very comfortable firing people too.
Hmm. Interesting. No one's ever said that on this show or to me in a conversation. I usually am the one saying that. So when I was starting up, for me, obviously, I never worked in advertising ever. So I built on the back of logic and whatever I learned in consulting for 2 years. So one thing I was clear is that if things are not working out with somebody and you want to end it at the earliest because it's beneficial for everybody involved.
Yes.
So I always believed hire fast, fire faster. That was just something I picked up off the internet that summarizes my thought process very well, and it's worked. Obviously, I mean there have been times where I feel the hiring decision was too like fast, where you jump into it because sometimes the need of the business in B2B is that you need people to move the needle, else you don't, right? But what's been your outlook to this?
I think as a owner, CEOs, our primary responsibility is to create shareholder value.
Mm,
And I don't think people are good or bad, right?
right,
It's the environment where they thrive in.
right,
Maybe the environment we have created for them is not the right fit for
mm,
them, and they'll thrive in somewhere else.
right,
Uh, Secondly, is that if we put them in an environment they cannot thrive in, we also not doing justice to their talent.
yeah,
That's how I think about things, right? So the third perspective to this is, there is a large enough team, and if I am retaining someone who's not as efficient as the other team members, then I'm doing injustice to my other team members too.
right,
Yeah. So there's eventually we have to create shareholder value. That's what we are paid for. So in that case, I'm very comfortable in but honest, open communication, sincere feedback, and with proper reasoning. I'm very comfortable taking hard decisions in life. And firing is just one of them, right? There could be many such hard decisions. Pivot is a hard decision, right? Very comfortable taking hard decisions in life. It all again comes down to adversity, ability to face
right,
adversity, because some decisions work in your favor, some decisions don't. Then what do you do? So it's okay.
right. And like, how do you do that? Like, generally, what's your method? Are you like, is it candor? Is it complete honest? In complete honesty rather, in terms of when you let someone go, tell them why so, or is there like a process you follow, or is it from case to case?
So as one of my core leadership value is being open and transparent communication.
Right.
And I'm not going to wait, at least people who report into me, right? I'm not going to wait for a year to. So I have a very structured way of life, right? So like, one-on-one weekly meetings with my one-downers,
Right.
right? And there's constant feedback
Right.
on what has gone right, what has gone wrong, areas of improvement. So it's not like a one-off event where someone
Yeah.
says, hey, it's going to happen, not happen. But I believe in overly communicating, there's less communicating. So when I wrote down my yearly goals, one was ruthless prioritization, second was compassionate leadership, third is I have to overly communicate then less communicate, because sometimes message does not go in the first time. You have to kind of repeat it again and again for someone to kind of imbibe the message, because people listen to what they want to listen, not what other person is saying.
Right.
So it is a little complicated.
Are there changes in a young Avi versus an older Avi as an entrepreneur? I'm assuming you were in this structure. Nobody is at that, like, I don't know, what age did you start? What?
Fairly young. So the older Avi is a lot more ripped, yes. I think the younger Avi had anger as a tool, to navigate difficult situations.
Right.
He believed that by expressing anger, things will happen. The more mature Avi thinks anger is the most useless emotion. Right? Just by angry or raising my voice, I'm not changing anything. In fact, I'm manipulating my own energy.
Right.
Yeah, I'm making my nights sad and I'm sleeping not well, right? So I don't ever get angry. So that's a massive difference. I try to, so what meditation taught me was to, if a work is not done on time, earlier I used to get pissed off. Now I kind of take a step back and ask for the reason why the work is not done. Was it lack of training? Is there an issue at home? Were you not happy or something has happened? Your mom okay? Your dad's okay? Do you need any help? Can I help you something? Right? And only if I find out if it was lack of intent,
Right.
then lack of capability, because capability is my job. Laziness is not my job.
Yeah.
So there's a massive difference in the way. The second is the younger Avi took pride in solving complex problems. I'd say it's the hardest problem, hardest logic. I'm very goddamn smart. I'm going to sit on a board, whiteboard. People come around me and I'm going to solve this problem for you. Now, I believe I'm actually mediocre smart. There's a bunch of smarter people in my team. My job is to make sure that all these really, really smart people, they come towards a common goal. So I've realized I'm not the smartest one. However, I have a unique talent of getting bunch of complex people agree or have a consensus to move forward. Right? So like having zero ego, because saying, Saanand, you are right, sir, you are right, sir, you are right. Now, since all of you guys are right, listen, let's do things this way so everyone is happy. But there's a difference between doing the right thing and moving forward.
Right.
The core value of Creditvidya is Creditvidya first. So you're right, you're right, you're right. But what is right for Creditvidya? Let's do that and move forward. That has been a source, biggest source for success, because then smart people do their things and come to a decision making which is right for Creditvidya.
Right.
It's right for an individual team member or a team. Doesn't really matter. CV first is the biggest value through which this organization runs.
Right. And how do you resolve conflict between the people that report into you if one or the other don't agree, or if they have different philosophies or different process?
Which happens a lot,
Yeah, a
right? As in when people become a little bit more matured in their career, they have sets of principles which they are really tied to. And it's called confirmation bias. And this is the most important part of a leader, is to kind of show them the right picture. And again, the framework helps is that, hey, listen, two people are arguing because they believe this is their way is the right way of doing things. But what you have to come back and say, hey, listen, we all signed up for this through credit their first value. So I really do not care about personal egos, personal this, right? We have to come to a decision with which credit there first.
Yeah.
And hence, I think what most entrepreneurs do not do really well is to articulate these values, hire a right HR to get the right people in that room.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm biggest culprit for it, right? I think HR was the most overlooked function of my organization. So in this year's self-review, I said, what is one thing I really didn't do well is my focus on HR team.
Right. Was there anything that you particularly think you did wrong in that early stint, and which could have probably accelerated growth? Not just HR, could be anything. That seems just taking from young versus old. The old tends to reflect back. I have a theory. I don't reflect back because then that regret, it's like that again. Cricket analogy: you swing and miss, you forget the ball, you go forward to the next ball.
No, so let's just kind of go with that analogy as well, right? You swing and miss and you go to the next ball. But if you don't know Acha, if you had the shiny side on the outside, did it outside
Swing out or swing in.
spin, then you don't know, right? So
Right.
the next one you have to be prepared. Now coming back to your question, the biggest mistake, I wouldn't say biggest mistake because at that point in time it was the right thing to do, but by reflecting back, I think the biggest, if I were to redo things, I could have done pivot faster, right? The writing was on the wall. Perhaps two things, confirmation bias, right? I take pride in being extremely good at, let's say, logic and hence statistical models, building AI based algorithms, right? That had profound impact on a bunch of banks and VFCs. I took pride in it and not thinking about business model.
Right.
So the learning is the following: great product is not equal to great business model. We had a great product, we didn't have the great business model.
Right.
By pivoting, we said product is product minus, but business model is business model plus plus. So two learnings, right? One, not pivoting fast enough. Second, not having my own flexibility or questioning my own decision to make that flip.
Right.
Now, if you ask me, I'm willing to challenge my own theses every single day, and I'm more flexible or fluid. But I will take a decision, I'll stand by it. But I'm still, if someone challenges, I'll listen to them. I don't think there's any harm in questioning yourself and becoming better.
Yeah. Right. It's like I'm getting like a I wouldn't call a masterclass, but like I know what next 5 years, 6 years are going to look like. It's an ever. You seem like you've been through that curve. So you're what 11 years into being an entrepreneur?
Nine-ish.
Nine.
Nine-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nine. Yeah. So obviously you're much ahead than I was by
Same boat, man.
33%.
I'm
Of
so
the
proud of what you have built. I mean, I'm really, really happy. And I've seen you outside the gym for the first time, but very happy what you have built.
No, I think we met before once on 12th Main, just walking by,
Okay.
long back. But like I told you, I've never seen Avi without gym attire. It's the first time, always sleeveless. So this is a pleasant surprise. So starting a fintech in India where financial literacy in itself is so low, right? Even the educated Indians do not understand financial instruments properly, don't understand how to, as simple as filing tax, saving tax. I think that is also one of the reasons why I think fintech influencers or financial influencers have just grown so rapidly in the last 2 3 years. And you spoke of how not qualifying, or that incident with civil score sort of inspired you in a lot of ways to or give you the genesis of the idea. How important is a civil score in a country like ours,
Um,
or how important is financial literacy as a whole?
so let's take a step back and let's think of a country, right? For a country to become prosperous, you need to have money movement, right?
Yeah.
You need to generate wealth. Now, one way is to kind of say, hey, I'm going to increase wages by creating a bunch of jobs, which is extremely difficult to do. Or you want to say, hey, I'm going to increase consumption.
Right.
And now consumption can be driven by credit, right? So credit is the foundation for most economical growth
Right.
for large developed countries, right? So consumer credit to GDP in a country like US is 128% compared to India, which is like 24%. So credit can fuel growth if used properly.
Right.
Now, the infrastructure, like, and giving out credit is easy, right? So today, if I go out in your office and say, hey, listen, I have money to distribute, who wants this money?
Everyone wants it.
Everyone wants it, right? But the question is not giving money. Which of these people you are giving money to will pay back the money, right? So that's what a credit bureau infrastructure does. It kind of identifies who, if given a loan to, will pay back the loan. Now that infrastructure is kind of built in US over last 80 odd years, where they've kind of said, like when I was in US, I got my first credit card when I was 17, and hence my repayment history got built. And by the time I graduated, they had enough, let's say, data on me to figure out if I were to give exposure of X amount of dollars to Avi, will this person pay back the loan or not? India, we don't have that infrastructure. And hence bureaus exist, right? Bureaus the central thesis of bureau for existence is economic prosperity of the country, and hence they are regulated. In a country like India, is equally as important as a country like US. It's just that US had a bunch of head start, like India didn't have that head start, and there are players like Creditvidya that exists today is to give this country that edge to say, hey, listen, you can distribute credit efficiently, distribute affordable credit efficiently, because there are newer, better ways of scoring a customer than didn't exist maybe 10 years ago.
So, on that note, so how does one transition, or how does one big as a country rather, right? You touched upon credit again. It's so misunderstood in our country. Look at it negatively rather. Taking loan looked at as a liability. Taking kind of credit or say to from a lender is looked at again as being under a kind of pressure based situation. How do you break out of that? Because there's no other way to truly create wealth other than to leverage credit.
Yeah, I mean, you can create wealth in other means, like you can get a higher degree, improve jobs, a bunch of other ways to create wealth, right?
But they're not incremental, right? In that sense.
So you can create assets, as I say, home loan, right? I think people want to pay, like my parents, right? Like they bought a house, and the first thing they were thinking of paying off the home loan, because as you said, the social connotation around credit is very negative in the country. Now my question is, someone is giving you free money at 8.5%. When index funds on an average give you 10% return, why would you ever want to fucking pay off that money?
Yeah.
Correct, no? And hence the cost of credit kind of matters. But
Right.
if you get affordable cost of credit, right? And I'm not by any means saying, invest in stock market for generating higher returns, but you can build assets, right? Through efficient use of credit, you can build income generating assets.
Right.
But socially, udhar has been looked down upon in this country, right? But that social connotation has to change, right? But efficient pricing of credit also has to happen.
Right.
So if these two kind of balance things out, right? If these two guys get balanced, then I think we have a bright future ahead of us. Yes. So let's kind of talk about what is credit score, right? And I mean, I talk about this, I used to talk about this a lot, right? A credit score in US is used. So I'll give you an example, right? One of my friends got a really good job at Microsoft, but his job offer got rescinded because he had a poor credit score. Okay. So traditionally, what is credit score? A credit score is nothing but a number that measures your discipline,
Right. Exactly.
right? What is discipline in that case? Hey, listen, your discipline of making your repayments on time on the loans you have taken. If you have on time made payments for over the course of years, then you have a good credit score. If you've not made payments on time, you have a poor credit score. Like fundamentally, that is a question, right? And hence the concept says in insurance, because people drive their own cars, if you are more disciplined and you made payments on time, you're more likely to stick in your lane and hence less likely of accidents. So credit score fundamentally measures your discipline. And hence it's used in jobs, it's used in rent agreements, it's used in insurance, it's used in loans, it's used everywhere in US. Now in India, not so much. Yeah.
And China does something very interesting, right? They take it a level up. It's not just credit score. It's more of a social score of types.
China is a different beast altogether. Or China, I mean, on Twitter I was following this journalist who covers Chinese media, and again, I'm not sure how much of this is correct or not correct. They will publicly shame people with poor credit scores. So you see massive billboardings of people with poor credit scores,
Really,
right? Yeah.
like your school when you put your top scorers and the ones who fail.
And like, murga banate the na. So they are like massive hoardings of people with poor credit score. And so they're publicly shaming individuals with poor credit score.
Right.
Now, country ours, we don't have repercussions of having a poor credit score. If I had a poor credit score, I came and asked you a job offer, you'd give me a job offer.
Yeah.
I go to a car insurance, they'll give me a car insurance, right? The only repercussion we have is if we go to a bank and it want a loan or card, they might not give. But ours is not a credit driven society anyways.
Right.
So it is important for economic growth, a good credit score because it helps you be more disciplined, take more advantages of the loans that are given to you,
Right.
get loans at a more attractive prices. Are we there yet as a country? The answer is no.
Right. So interestingly, like in you run a fintech, so do you do a credit check on people you hire?
Yeah,
So is that like a big important parameter?
we do a complete background verification check. It is. I mean, for me, again, like one of the core values of credit, there's discipline, right? So again, for design thinking, if you think about it, right, like everything that I've done is to kind of hire similar kind of people
Yeah.
and given them a common goal. I mean, how do you define that similar kind of people? Like, do I have, will I trade off a rock star? Like, it's cricket jargon, let's say, a Virat Kohli, like let's assume a rock
Right.
star for 5 Rahul Dravids.
You would.
100% any day.
Consistency, dependability.
In that rigor, you bring a table, right? At least in my business, like
Right.
lending is a disciplined business. It's
Right.
not like, what. I mean, if I was an advertising agency, perhaps my answer would be different, right? Because I need that eureka moment of
Yeah. Need
brilliance.
Mavericks. Yeah.
However, in my, and hence, what I do for a company, my company is not necessarily true for everyone else, right? But what is true for me as an individual, as my values, as my brand, is what I have done right.
Right. So you have workforce in different cities, right? Have you seen difference in discipline in these cities?
I've seen difference in culture.
Right. Exactly. I meant as a subset of culture.
Yeah, it's seen difference in culture. Like Bombay is a lot more hustle oriented, right? Like फोड़ना है करेंगे चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए, let's do this. Hyderabad is more a little laid back. And more structured, more family oriented. Like
Right.
family means a lot to them. They go to a bar, and the first time I visited out or went out for drinks with my colleagues in Hyderabad, they ordered biryani with beer. I was shocked and surprised. Like, bro, I've not had biryani. Forget with beer. And the joy that brings, they get by a company lunch. Bombay people never appreciate a goddamn lunch.
Right.
They wanted daru. Like if you want to book them, smile on their faces, take them to a alcohol.
Yeah.
Hyderabad, they don't care. They want food. Like so, small subtle differences there,
Right.
but it's what make my life exciting. To be
Right.
honest,
And here, Bangalore?
in Bangalore, I am sitting in CRED's office right now, so I really don't know right now.
But outside of work, in terms of people, I'm sure you meet people in gym and otherwise.
I don't meet people otherwise.
Actually, yeah, true.
I am one of the most antisocial person you'll ever meet. But I think Bangalore is more closer to Bombay than to Hyderabad, despite being in South. Maybe it's more Cosmo in a way, like a lot of people from different cities have come in together, and also startup culture. So most of the engineers I know, like they want a happy hour, they want to go out, they want to have fun. Slightly more younger crowd.
Right. Yeah, I think it comes with when you have a lot of migrants and
Yeah.
sorry, when you have a lot of migrants and you have people from other cities, and it becomes less empathy, right? Because you don't know enough people, whereas Hyderabad probably is a lot more
Homegrown talent.
talent. Yeah.
But Bombay is that way great, right? I think Bombay, like, if I were to go back to Heartbeat, like Bombay, I love that city. Like, everyone is like someone studied abroad, like different facets of life, from entertainment to media to like finance
Yeah.
to everything. You get it, and everyone's ambitious, everyone's hungry to grow. It's unaffordable, so if you're not like top of your game, you will not be able to survive in that city. So it brings in a New York City kind of vibe.
Yeah, it
I lived
does.
in New York, like it's like you have to be top of your game to survive and thrive.
Right.
And if you are there, you'll find similar people
Yeah.
that pushes you to become better.
Yeah.
I love the hustle.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely, I agree. Even in our line of work, I think so. I keep saying in our line of work, the most creative of talents you find, best of writers, etc. You find in Bombay, because also Bollywood's there. So historically, if you had to become a filmmaker, because after a while, as a creative, that's the pinnacle, right? So everyone goes to that city, and you want people who are good in PR, lobbying, relationships. You find it in Delhi. and then you
Yeah,
want new age tech solutions, understanding data and advertising, etc., then Bangalore's the
Bangalore's
place,
the place.
and
Yeah.
everything else is everywhere. But the hustle in Bombay is incredible, right? Like somebody will travel from your Borivali to Kolaba to just and every day, and then be in sharp at 9 without being late, because everything is so structured there between you getting a bus to a train and then getting down at the station, walking to the office. Like I know stories of some of my colleagues who have moved from there, or my other partners who we work with, and then they keep talking about this. That's just incredible, that hunger. And it's not the greatest of weather, in comparison to from where we come. And
Yeah.
we always make that comparison. I feel it's very fast, very cutthroat, but I think people absolutely just love it.
It's a kind of different kind of culture, right? I think that culture is also built on massive adversity.
Yeah,
When you
true.
talk about Kolaba to, I've heard people go travel from Pune to Bombay every day, right? 3 hour train first thing in the morning, work throughout, just so
Go back.
unaffordable for the city to live.
Yeah,
Um, but the hustle it creates is very different, right? And that's why
true.
you see some of the bestest and brightest. Why is New York is not, Manhattan is not the most affordable city to live in?
Yeah,
Yet people, some of the brightest and the best will flock in that city.
right.
You'll have shittier apartments. You would have zero life because you're spending most of your life in commute. Yet it attracts people like me a lot
Right.
because there's a saying, hustle satisfies my soul. It does. Else I'll be bored, right? Like, what will I do with my life? Drink and party? The hell no, I don't want that.
So, there's another saying that is, if you wake up in silk sheets, it's hard to hustle. Do you think early success can do that, where you get too much too soon and then you slow down?
I think success after seeing adversity, and adversity is slightly perhaps a wrong word. Success after a lot of grunt work tastes much better than success without that much of a grunt work, because you don't know if it's like what resulted in that success. So I actually feel a little bad for people who are never seen, who are just born with silver spoon, and like they've never seen the other side of life. They don't know, right?
Right.
What's going to hit them once, right? So, and then I think Dr. Uberman says that dopamine is actually the process,
Yeah.
right? And now it's not the. I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, ever since the acquisition, I have not had a drink. I have not taken a day off from work.
Right. It's been what, 8 months?
So yeah, the acquisition, like the formalities got completed recently,
Right.
like because we are going through an NCLT process,
Right.
but the paperwork happened, or let's say technically in January I was okay, but paperwork recently got done. But I'm still not.
Right.
So coming back to the question, right? I think it tastes much better because of the amount of effort I've put in. If I hadn't put in that much effort, I don't think I'll be this content right now.
And it's a mindset too, right? Like, you're not satisfied, you have the drive, so you want more.
It's like going to the gym, right? You put in hours and hours and hours of work, and then you get to rip six pack abs. You enjoy it so much more than saying, "Hey, listen, bros." It doesn't. Like, it's different. It's different. And some people get it easily. Some people don't. I say this again to my team a lot, right? Things are never really, really good. If they were that good, you would not be sitting here right now.
Yeah.
Things are never really, really, really bad. If it were that bad, you'd not be sitting right now. Right? I'm fortunate enough that I'm doing a podcast with you on a Thursday afternoon.
Right.
Right? Things were not that really good for me. Things were
Right.
not that really bad for me. So it's okay.
Right. So, what do you think is that one skill that an entrepreneur needs over anything else to be successful in today's world?
I think there are a couple of skills. Okay, I'm gonna start with, and I'm talking about CEOs, right? And I think entrepreneurs and CEOs. Learn how to sell. two things being equal, people buy from friends. Two things being unequal, people still buy from friends. Yeah, and there's a fantastic book. It's called Influence by Robert Cialdini. I have gifted that book countless times to a bunch of people. I highly, highly recommend that book. So, for a CEO or an entrepreneur to be successful, our primary role is to sell, and not just sell to a client, sell your vision to your team. Right? There are a bunch of selling that happens. Sell to your spouse that this is the best thing you're doing in your life. Sell to your own self that there is no opportunity cost compared to what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So selling is really, really important, right? So I think be good at it. Some of the greatest CEOs you've noticed are the best salespeople.
Right.
Right? So that's first really, really important thing. The second really important thing is compartmentalization and prioritization. This is slightly more technical in nature, but as an entrepreneur or CEO, you're bombarded with a bunch of issues, right? From hey, the sales numbers are not high today this month. Hey, listen, the tech may this API has gone down, or this client is not happy, right? Now, if you sit down and try to solve all these problems at once, you're not
Right.
going to go anywhere, right? So you have to have the superpower of compartmentalizing your problem statements, and you can I figured that out. Like 1 hour, I'm going to dedicate only on this problem statement. And one thing that I have learned a lot is to wake up really early in the morning. I wake up at 4:45, 5 a.m. So my first waking hour from 6 to let's say 7:38, I try to solve for the biggest problem, not the most challenging problem, but the problem that has gives me the most best outcome.
Right.
And I'm gonna first of all find out prioritize which problem gives me the best, let's say 10x result, and compartmentalize that and only solve for that problem for 2 hours. And once I'm mentally drained, I go to the gym. Right? Because then I'm saying I'm not going to be that productive anymore because I've really spent a lot of my mental energy solving this problem. Now I'm willing to get physically drained. So so prioritizing what problem to think about and then compartmentalizing yourself to only think about that problem
Right.
is a superpower. But if you do that, what you see that some other problems get solved on their own because they're not large enough and your team members will solve it. Some problems are immaterial, they'll disappear.
Right. How does an early stage entrepreneur figure that out? Because the first one, yes, I think that's a life skill to have, the ability to sell. But the ability to prioritize, because it comes after trying and testing and failing at times at attempting to solve things, right? Because I know how organized I am and how less organized I was 5 years ago, and how I would be more organized 5 years from now. I think it's just a function of wisdom. You get better. But how do you teach yourself that? How do you nudge yourself in the direction to start organizing? Because I think this is the number one. Discipline is like one of the rare traits of life, even though it's one of the most important. How do you stop yourself from going out on a Friday night and drinking if you have an early morning Saturday activity or gym routine to follow? Or because those small wins eventually get you into the mindset that you spoke of, right? Very difficult to jump into that of prioritization and compartmentalization when you're figuring things out, I would say. And this is my context because I still consider myself very early in the journey of entrepreneurship. So hence, from that point of view.
Hi, a life gyan, okay? You need to really, really know what you really want in life. Okay? And if you don't make sacrifices to what you really want in life, you don't deserve that fucking thing. Cool? You want to be a rep CEO with an exit, fuck everything else.
And just do it.
And the amount of sacrifice I made, I've not seen my parents for 2.5, 3 years, right? You have to really first you have to figure out what you really want. And if you really, really want that,
You have to go all in.
fuck everything else. Why do you want to if you want a six-pack abs, why do you want to fucking eat rice, bro? Not eat fucking rice, you'll survive, nah. So I think people make excuses.
Right.
This again, I tell my team always, right? There are 100 different reasons what you would say no to. There's only one reason you want to say yes to, because I want that fucking goal. And I am that kind of guy. If I want that goal, then world can go for a fucking toss. I really don't give a matlab, sorry, I've used F word more
Yeah,
than
please
I've
do.
ever, right?
It's okay.
But the point is, the question that you asked me, right, is if you want something really, 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 really bad,
You'll do what it takes.
then why does it anything matter if you really want to be the best? Let's say for me was whatever I wanted to be, then I when was the last time I went out eat dinner? I don't remember. When was the last time everyone said Avi is the biggest asshole, doesn't even take us out to brunch or lunch? I don't remember. I've not done anything in life besides work, work out, and read, which now I can change,
Yeah.
right? But like for 6+ years, when was the last time I went on a vacation? I don't remember. When was the last time I saw my parents? I don't remember. When was the last time I went on a date at midnight? I don't remember. Like, if you wanted to go on a date with me after 9 p.m., it's not happening because I have to be in bed by 10 and wake up, do my 2 hours of productive work, and hit the gym at 8:30. And I'm still a young 30-year-old, like, no different than perhaps he's like 100 years younger than me, right? But still. So, to answer your question, if you really, really, really goddamn want it, fuck everything else. But a lot of people don't have that desire to want it desperately. How does that desire get cultivated inside you? I was fortunate to see adversity very young age in my life. So I know I never want to be in that shoe. I never want to go to bed hungry and shovel snow
Right.
when it's like minus 40 outside.
Right.
So not drinking is an easy option.
You are wired in
I am wired in.
into your craft.
And just so that come back, right? I think this ties in really, really into mental health. Okay? Because the story I tell myself is very different than an older Ravi or younger Ravi would have told himself. Like when I don't go out now, I would have said ki acha because I have to work hard, because I have to do this. Now I say because I want to win. The story I might tell myself is very
Right.
different because I want to win. I enjoy sleeping early, waking up early, and I wake up with the biggest smile on my face because I want to win. Earlier it was, oh shit, man, I have to get up early. That's why I have to sleep. Or yeah, I have to go to office at 9:30. Now all of that is done because I want to excel in my craft. These are my life goals or values. I want to be known as one of the fittest guys out there. So I've
Right.
kind of made myself, let's say, a future version of Avi or my role model.
Right.
Now I'm excited to be that role model. Then life becomes easier in your own head because you're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it because, hey, this was what I imagined 5 years down the road I will be. Same thing. I imagine myself as ripped, successful 3.5 years ago during COVID.
Right.
Now I imagine something else. So the question is not doing it because I'm forced to do it. I'm doing it because I really, really enjoy doing it because I want to become the Avi 5 years from now.
Right.
So mental wellness is really, really important.
Right. And so, I'm curious to ask. I know you, like you said, you work out. I know how much you read. I've picked up so many book recommendations from you. Uh, you always put that up on Instagram. So, how do you wind down? Are these the only two channels that you have, or like, is there anything else like a secret sauce? I'm assuming sleep is also a
Yeah.
big.
Um, I'm not a person with variety of interest. I'm fairly boring, uh, but workout helps me a lot. And one thing that I do, and sometimes I don't speak about it or don't post it on Insta, is wander aimlessly in a new city. Okay. For me, exposure is growth, and the exposure can come from people, books, city, wherever. And for me, the idea of winding down is to just be completely myself, born in a new city, and absorb different things. So this birthday weekend, I went on a trip to Kurg, right? And I just walked at 6:30 in the morning, and they had a reading room. And I just sat there looking at the pictures of wildlife, right? That also, there's a concept of lazy thinking. Are you aware of lazy thinking?
Yeah, you don't do much physically or
There's a coffee thinking where you kind of sit down and coffee and you drink coffee and you like put a notepad and write down, and it's coffee thinking, right? You like
that's just
kind of
every day
say,
for me, I
yeah,
guess.
there's a coffee thinking, and which is good, right? A lot of people do it, right? And what I've realized over the course of years, coffee thinking is great, but lazy thinking is much better for me. And for me, lazy thinking is what is like, I'm not sitting down and thinking about the problem. I'm subconsciously that problem exists, right? So like say this birthday weekend, I thought of this one problem statement I really want to solve for. So one of the problem statement is, can you make lending journey complete DIY in India?
Right.
Okay? Because either डंजो में भी help चाहिए, स्विगी में help चाहिए, people call center है,
Yeah.
सब कुछ है, right? But can you make it more efficient? So subconsciously I knew of a problem that I want to resolve, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to sit down and write down. So one of the ways for me winding down is, hey, listen, that subconscious, I'm not going to think about anything else because I forced myself to think about that problem only. But I'm going to walk in the nature. I'm going to like eat food and let that problem grow inside me.
Right.
And what I realized that I find 10 creative solutions, and it's winding down, but being a little productive. I've realized that works really, really well for me. So outside of workout, this wandering in a completely new city, I've done it in Varkala in Kerala, where I've just 4 days, I've just in shorts, like I've walked around, just thinking about a problem.
Right.
And I've done this couple of times, and
Right.
and solo. Like the idea is to become solo, like go
Right.
solo.
Very interesting. What's your routine like? You gave some tidbits to it, but curious to know. It could be pre-acquisition also. I'm more curious to know what that was like. That must have been proper hustle.
It's still. So I usually wake up by 5 a.m. I'd do my first bout of intense mental work between 6 to 8, 8:15, 8:30. Then I'll do first bout of intense physical work from 8:39 to 11ish.
Right.
Then I'll come back and I will have one meeting that is set up either with my leadership, right, or
Right.
some of the reviews, right, which happens either at 11:30 or 12:30 and goes for an hour and a half, 2 hours. After that, I will have some sort of a downtime on kind of getting my thoughts around and like sending all the emails through. Someone has called me, do a bunch of these things. After that, some bit of lazy thinking again. And so, okay, so Mondays are business reviews, Tuesdays is like tech review, Wednesdays HR and finance review,
Right.
Thursdays are one-on-ones, and Fridays client meetings. So I've structured my way in a life in a way where every day everyone knows ki abhi kya kar raha hai. Okay, and if there are business reviews, then I know these team members are gonna come and call shareholder meeting there and talk to me about it. And second bout of physical activity happens between 4:30 to 5:30. It could be a walk meeting, talk and walk meeting. It could be sitting on my watt bike and doing a meeting.
Right.
Then I'll break my fast around 5:30. So this is again one of the productivity hacks I learned
Yeah.
is when there's no food in your stomach, your body is a lot more efficient. So you think about it, I woke up at 5 and I break my fast around 4:30, which means for good 12 odd hours I have zero food in my body,
Yeah.
and hence I'm like today I'm not broken my fast yet,
Yeah.
and I'm very efficient. And I'll break my fast.
And this is solid foods, right? For only for food. You still consume coffee and
So black coffee.
Yeah.
And
yeah. We did a whole segment on this in one of the episodes with Chris when he was here. So I did 2 stints of OMADs. One last year in August and one recently. Then I came out of it because I found my lack of routine of a sleep cycle affected. But yeah, we'll go into this as soon as you finish your
Sure, no.
rest of your
So
routine.
5:30, I'll break my fast. I'll have massive amounts of protein. The idea is to get roughly around 1600, 1700 calories in a 2 hour, 2.5 hour window. And that 1600, 1700 calories, I want roughly around 200 grams of protein. So kind of like food is like a medicine. I sometimes down chicken with kombucha, sometimes down chicken with, I don't know, anything. For me, just like downing chicken is more important than tasting any food. I'll do that, and then I'll again do one meeting, which is mostly catch up with the team member one on one, or if it's a skill set that I'm learning. So I've kind of divided my routine into three parts, right? I'm trying to learn physiognomy, like body structure, so I can be more stronger. There is a second, what I'm trying to learn or is influence, is the art of persuasion, right? So I will have blogs or podcast either on strength, either on influence. And third is personal branding, right? So that's a third area of interest for me. So the evening time when I'm like, I've had, let's say, glucose in my body because I've eaten food, I'm not going to be the most productive from work perspective. So I would actually kind of pick either of these three facets which I want to improve on, spend time there, and be in bed by 10ish.
Two things that stand out for me personally, and I want to ask you. One is the waking up early thing, right? Because that's something that is spoken about a lot about powerful CEOs or the people in position of power running important organizations who some of them wake up at 3 and 4. Um, I know for a fact just having the discipline to wake up at say 6 instead of 9 brings a world of change
Yeah.
in someone, right? It's incredible the amount of time you have because I know for a fact whenever I wake up the first hour, my brain's not in the best of positions. And I used to do this mistake of having coffee as soon as I wake up, like 10 minutes into waking up, which is terrible for your cortisol. So I stopped that now. But that is such a like a game changer, right? Having those extra hours, and it's not spoken about from that productivity standpoint as much. It's more of like those inspirational stories of people do, and I think nowadays it's not taken seriously because everybody talks about it and passing by and not going into depths of what personal changes that come through. For me personally, I think just thinking has become a lot better
Yeah.
ever since I started waking up early. I process information very differently than how I used to, and that preparation actually starts the previous night. That's again
Yes.
something that people don't speak about. Were you someone who always woke up early, or there's something you brought about as a change later on once you were an entrepreneur or some other point in life?
No. I think COVID hit me hard, and I was diagnosed with mild depression at that point of time. And I think I had a slip disc, mild depression. So everything that could go wrong went wrong. That was the time I decided to like take control of my life, and inculcate good habits. I went on this yoga trip. Again, one of those lazy thinking. There is this Mandrim Yoga. There is this place. It's owned by, I'm forgetting the name of the yoga center, right? It's owned by a UK couple. All right.
Jay and Jay Shetty, is that him?
No, I know.
Irrelevant.
There was a massive bonfire, and like as usual, I didn't talk to anyone, and I was chilling. And this really old guy comes to me and is like, "You have to come and sit in the bonfire with us. I'm not going to take no for an answer. Okay, chalo, let's go ahead and fucking sit, yaar." And I sat in the corner, and like there were a bunch of people dancing, and there was the 80-year-old lady dancing and having fun, and like I was chilling, chumma on the side, like when you start saying chumma, you're in Bangalore. And this guy comes to me and he says, "Listen, Avi, there are billions of stars in the sky, right? There were billions of people before you, and there are billions of people after you. Don't take yourself so seriously. Come to my breathwork class the next day." Okay, somehow that old man had a profound impact just because he said two lines and he walked away. And the next day he made me do Wim Hof breathing. And like, I don't know, after that Wim Hof breathing, I like cried profusely, right? Like let go of emotions. I don't know what happened, but I've not looked back since then. I've really not looked back since then. Like somehow I found courage to take control of my life. Morning routine happened. Breathing practices became like part of life. I started training a lot harder. I became mindful of what I ate. I started taking smarter decisions. I had courage to pivot the company, and I've not looked back since.
Right. Do you know why you were feeling depressed? Is there something you want to talk about?
I just think too many responsibilities and not knowing, and people don't talk about this for entrepreneurs a lot. It looks very sexy from outside. Yeah, it's a very lonely
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, it's because eventually the onus of running the company is on you. The onus of paying salaries is on you, and people don't understand the amount of stress one goes through
Yeah.
to be able to handle that. Right? Creditvidya, fortunately or unfortunately, had only raised $10 million so far in our journey. Right? So it's not that we were loaded with cash, right? And we were always frugal. We were
Right.
always like, hey, let's become profitable. And you understand this as much as I do. So yeah, I think massive responsibilities, massive not knowing where I was going, and then people around me scaring a lot, like, hey, listen, world is going to come to an end. Like, I don't know if you remember the first month,
Yeah.
month and a half COVID, Sequoia, every single VC fund wrote a massive memo on fire everyone or like
Yeah.
close down shops, and everyone said lending is not going to come back again.
Yeah.
Commercial real estate is doomed for life,
Yeah.
right? And there was such prediction
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
like, and you were like still young, like you were still figuring out, hey, listen, this is what I signed up for, and all of a sudden the world is going to end, and I have responsible for so many people. What do I do, yaar?
Yeah. I was in a similar state during the first 2 months of COVID. The ambiguity was incredible, right? And I think I remember reading this in a lot of business or human behavior based research papers, which said human beings have a tendency to default.
Yeah,
So we come back to our original state, right?
yeah,
And unless that behavior change is long enough to make it permanent. So I remember, like, I think the lockdown opened on May 8th or 9th or something like that. And I was here the very next day, like literally in this room. And I was the only guy in the office. And I was thinking, and I was telling myself the same thing that if, because I was clear that the graph had fallen, it was an L or some, call it an L graph.
yeah,
It could become a V at some point or a U. Or
yeah,
then, but then I think what happened was a W of sorts for us, at least in our line of work. It bounced back, then it went down again. And the second lockdown again came back up. And I remember telling myself the same thing because I was in a similar state with ambiguities. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's the worst thing, right? Not being in control of your future is like so like difficult to deal with. And I keep telling this to most people, like when they say that, oh, you're in a position of power, you have strength, you have money, you can do what you want. And I'm like, no, it's not. You have other problems that come with it, which you can't probably see from outside. And this is a good thing that we're having chat because I don't think entrepreneurs talk about this enough.
yeah, yeah. No, so I'll also tell you one of my learnings in has been, right, most people find solace in fear. Okay. And Twitter, I think, is a world of its own, right? And people there sometimes induce man-made fear and paint the world as if it's going to end, right? Oh, recession kal hi aa jayega. Oh, world abhi tabah ho gaya, right? Oil price is going to happen this, right? Russia is going to go war in Ukraine, right? World is fucking going to end, right? So everyone is kind of having their own agenda to push things forward, and we find comfort in misery. We find like, ठीक है, world खत्म हो गया, मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? That is what I had to come out of, right? I had to realize that there is brighter, like if you just look at in 90 the first satellite that was sent on the moon has an inferior technology than on your smartphone.
Yeah.
In 1993, e-commerce was banned and only used for military operations. Can you live with your smartphone without your smartphone today?
No.
Not even for an hour.
Yeah.
So there are ways of looking at the problems. Again, they go back to the mental model that you were like the one you can say, "Acha, tomorrow the US is on the brink of recession for last 2 goddamn years."
Yeah.
And everyone is panicking.
Yeah.
But stock markets are at all-time high. right? So we love to live in fear. We love to look at, acha, this bad thing will happen to us. So, okay, I'm not going to do anything about it because it's given. Fuck that. I like to take control of my destiny now.
Right.
That's one big difference between an older Ravi and newer Ravi.
What's next for you?
Male stripper. No, I'm kidding. uh, that's why I worked so hard.
Actually, before we go into that, I have to touch on OMAD because
Yeah, yeah.
game changer.
Game changer.
Right. I don't. How did you get into this? How did you? So OMAD, for those listening, is only one meal a day, right? So you only eat once, like the early man used to. The concept is you don't need to keep feeding yourself, but you eat when you're hungry, and then like animals in the jungle, right? They hunt, they eat, and then they don't hunt until they're hungry again. Uh, I did it for a month. Incredible. First 2 days were hard. BP is all time high for me personally. I was getting triggered for the smallest of things. Then I figured a way to, like just live with it. The first 2-3 days is critical. Then I got through it, and I do this. I play football thrice a week in the mornings. The days I don't come to gym, and I realized that I'm able to move more because I track my steps, and so my stamina I felt increase because I felt lighter and I could had more energy, and it was incredible. So those are small signs I saw, and I remember I did it for like a month as a test, in fact, just to check myself, and it was crazy. Forget the weight loss, which happened. About 8 kilos I lost momentarily, but the mental effects were like wow. The concentration, the focus, ability to go back home after 12 hours of work and then still open laptop and not feel like a chore, but you want to do it, right? It was crazy. And you've been on it for almost what, a couple of years or 1.5 years,
No,
something?
no, 9 months, 10 months.
9 months, almost a year now, right?
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, yeah. Um, so your question is,
Impact of that on you as an entrepreneur. Could you have done it when you were living that hustle life? Or is it easier now with post, or maybe with lesser stress, I would say?
I think we consume more than what we have to. Whether it's information, whether it's food, point blank, right? We don't need to consume so much that we do.
Yeah.
And regarding food, I think I have a big problem with Indian food habits. Whether you take dosa, whether you take rice, chapati, Punjabi is worse, right? Because we're feeding carbs, our energy goes down, and then feed more carbs, spike our energy, that goes down, and feed more carbs, spike our energy, more goes down. It's a very counterintuitive. It's our diet lifestyle was built for laborer days, right? When we were actually doing a lot of physical hard work. But like when we are intellectually like sitting down and working on a fucking laptop, we really don't need so many calories. So I was never an overeater. Like never in my life I had sat down and just had a bunch of food. I think breakfast is the biggest culprit in our lives because we start our day with a bad habit of feeding carbs in ourselves, and also when glucose goes down, then you feed one more and feed one more, and you're sluggish throughout. So it is one of the biggest productivity hack or most important productivity hack I've had is to kind of just cut down my carbs. My first meal is protein.
Right.
And what time is it? Like 6:15, 20? I haven't had single, like besides black coffee, I haven't really had anything. And honestly, I'm very productive, very energetic, and with still a smile on my face. It 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 makes a lot of difference to just have that mental clarity. And I'll tell you, I started my whole fasting habits with 3-day water fast. After the yoga trip, I did a 3-day water fast. The first day was very difficult. Second day was slightly less difficult. But the story I tell everyone is I used to sit in flights because I traveled 4 cities a week, right? And I would have a laptop with to-do list, right? And there were like so many to-dos I would have to write down. I have to email this guy. I have to kind of talk to this bank. I have to kind of do this, do that. In my 3-day water fast, I open my to-do list and I write only one to-do. And just immense amount of clarity to say what is the one thing that I need to do that will give me 80% results.
Right.
I think it was Bombay to Delhi flight, so it was 2.5 hour flight. And Avi would have done 25 to dos. I wrote one to do for myself. Since then, I realized that we don't need to feed ourselves. And again, my learning has evolved from there, right? I think we are what we consume. It's food, it's attention, it's energies.
Right.
So the information you pay attention to in your Twitter feed subconsciously makes your delivers your voice.
Yeah.
The energies you are surround yourself with people defines your energies.
Yeah.
So I'm very selective about people I hang out with. If there is a bad energy, a heartbeat I'll cut out and walk away. I was invited to a Diwali party, okay? Some of the most gorgeous women I've ever seen in my life. An older Ravi would have like loved to just be there. I stayed there for 5 minutes. Because I just couldn't relate to the energy or
Right.
the vibes, right? And the energy was entitlement, right? You know, I couldn't relate to that. So I have now decided in last 3 years, I'm going to be selective about
Who you hang with?
who I hang out with, what food I put in my stomach, what information I pay attention to. Anything, everything I consume with my senses or subconsciously. And I think that I
Yeah.
take pride of being who I am.
Right.
So I'm very selective,
Right.
which I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah. Not at all. I keep saying you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
So there's always that you have to keep moderating. So yeah, agree with that. So what's next? I know I spoke about this to you briefly, and at that time you said you might become a strength and conditioning coach. Is that still the plan?
So I am I'm a part of CRED ecosystem, so I'll continue doing that. And yeah, there are opportunities where I get invited to be on board of the companies, startups. Just come out of shit I've seen in my life, bro. Uh, there is value, and I was at a conference again, right? It was a conference by a VC fund where they'd invited a bunch of LPs,
Right.
and they had asked me to be a guest speaker. And the biggest compliment I got, like when I went out of this, Avi, we have seen so many CEOs come speak, but no one is as fit as you. Yeah. And then the question is our country lacking a role model of someone? And I think for me, I don't want to be the most financial wealthy person. That's not the desire, but I kind of break this problem stream into health, wealth, and wisdom, right?
Right.
Am I really, really fit? Do I have enough financial savings to take care of the lifestyle I want? And am I learned enough? So wisdom, like some books or people, right? So is there a play in the country to nurture aspiring entrepreneurs to become the best version? And can I give them my learnings much faster instead of them learning and failing and starting it again?
Right.
So that is something I'm passionate about. Of course, CRED is something I'm very, very passionate about. I think it's a phenomenal company. Rest, yeah, I've really not thought through. I still want to, right now I'm sleeping 8 hours a day. I'm working out. I'm smiling a lot more. So I'm enjoying this, right? Not gonna jinx it.
Are you going to turn into a investor? That's do you want to contribute back into the Indian economy?
Everyone, I know my strength. My strength is an operator more than an investor. So I like to be on this side of the table. So I'm not thinking about being an investor, to be honest, but slightly more on the sweat equity side, perhaps. Because I enjoy seeing the business grow, right? Like I enjoy scaling a business.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of guy, money hands off, right? I think there are a lot of people who will be able to do that. That's not the intent. Also, I think interest lies in NFTs. Interest lies in building scalable distribution via WhatsApp. So there are things within credit ecosystem or outside of credit ecosystem where you can use technology to build massive scalable vertical commerce. I think is a very interesting
Yeah.
piece or area that's coming in. Creator economies, again, something very, very interesting. So the question, or at least the way I think about the world 5 years from now, is going to be very different than world now. What happened in 2010, I was not able to take massive benefit out of
Right.
it, but now I think I am educated enough to perhaps leverage my learnings, my community or network
Right.
to build a better future for myself.
This has been a great chat, Avi. Thanks a lot. First time we're meeting outside gym probably, and then it's been a great, great conversation. I
Thanks,
hope to get you back on the show at some point in time, a much older Avi,
thank you.
and then we'll have more conversations. Probably you're up to something different then. But this has been one of the most insightful conversations I've had in a long time. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Anand. Thanks, team.